Here are some of the top wedding venues in Jackson Hole, Wyoming and beyond. So here I am talking with Laura from Forever West Weddings, and she is a Wyoming wedding planner, and she's going to share some wedding venues that she think are amazing in the area and beyond.
So I would love to highlight a few different wedding venues in the Jackson area. Jackson has a great variety of venues for all sorts of people looking for different price points or different experiences. So I'm just going to start with the venue I worked with most recently, and these are in no particular order, but we'll just dive on in. So the first venue is actually super well known. As soon as you Google Jackson Hole Weddings, you're probably going to find this venue, and for good reason, I think. Diamond Cross Ranch is located about 35 minutes from Jackson, and on clear days, they offer absolutely stunning views of the Tetons. And I would recommend, though, maybe looking into booking them earlier in the summer, because Wyoming does have fire season. This year, we lucked out and didn't really have a bad fire season, but if you can look for those potentially June or early July dates, I think those are going to be your best bet for having that gorgeous Teton view from Diamond Cross Ranch. This year, they actually updated the floors in the venue. So Diamond Cross used to have a dirt floor in their gorgeous event space, and they put in a concrete floor, which is amazing. And then they added new sailcloth on the ceiling and lighting, and they also added in a bar space and a little bar hangout area with Western decor in it. So that is absolutely amazing, and one thing that if you are a destination bride, you don't have to worry about having a little bit of that furniture vignette without having to bring it in. So that's great. And then for next year, for couples looking at booking Diamond Cross next year, actually, something I always thought as a drawback to Diamond Cross was that it is 35 minutes from town. So, and they did not offer lodging. So everybody had to plan shuttle buses or some form of transportation out to the venue. But for next year, it's a family-owned venue, and they've merged with another family property, and they're going to have cabins out there on site. They're still working on it, but they're going to sleep up to about 75 guests. And that will, I think, make Diamond Cross one of the most well-rounded and gorgeous venues in the area. To top it off, Diamond Cross is a family-run venue, and the owners are incredibly kind. And one thing I love about any venue that is family-run is you're not going to have the same sort of management turnover that you have at some other venues. I've worked with other venues in the Jackson area and beyond where I've worked with 3 different managers in the course of a 10-month planning period. So working with those family-run locations, I think, is always a plus, because at least the top management is going to, for the most part, stay the same.
That's a really good point. I just shot a wedding. Something that I heard that was a huge pain point for them was that management transferred halfway through. And they got along really well with the initial person, and they just did not get along that great with the second person, but they were already kind of in contract, and it became a huge negative for them. It was really unfortunate to happen. And so I think most people would not see that as a negative just because they wouldn't expect it to happen, but take it from our experience that does happen, and it can create a lot of friction depending on who that new person might be.
Yeah, and just a general wedding tip is I would always recommend that in the event that management might change at your venue, that you aren't working on verbal promises from any venue manager.
Mm-hmm.
I would always make sure that you're getting promises in writing, or even better, seeing if they can add it to a contract. Make sure it's not just a verbal promise with a venue manager. So another wedding venue that I would love to highlight in the Jackson area, especially for all the brides and brides, everyone out there, grooms and grooms who are looking to have a wedding in the Jackson area, is the Bentwood Inn. If you are trying to host an intimate wedding in the Jackson area, it's a great venue. It is situated in Wilson, Wyoming, which is, I think, almost a perfect distance between the Jackson Hole Mountain Resort and the town of Jackson Hole. The Bentwood Inn sleeps 25 guests comfortably at the inn. So if you wanted to just limit your guest count to 25 and have everyone stay there, you could have a really fun, intimate weekend at the Bentwood Inn. If you wanted to go a little bit larger, the event manager there thinks that 60 to 75 is about the sweet spot for filling up that garden and making it look, full but not crowded out there. And so all of those additional guests, your whole wedding party can stay at the Bentwood Inn or your families, and then additional guests could have their pick of staying in the town of Jackson Hole or up at the Jackson Hole Mountain Resort lodging up there. So it's kind of nicely situated right in the middle of those two places. And if you've ever envisioned having a fire pit or sort of a more intimate feel, I think the Bentwood is a great spot. And then if you're coming out to Jackson for a luxury wedding, I have two recommendations that you could consider. Amangani is a gorgeous property. It's a 5-star resort located just outside of the town of Jackson. And then also Lost Creek Ranch is another gorgeous luxury wedding venue with those Teton views. So Amangani, to start off, they have 40 guest suites on the property, and they can seat up to about 120 guests in their largest event space. And they're great for guests year round. But I think the Amangani Resort, if you have ever envisioned walking down a grand staircase into your ceremony, I think this is your spot in Jackson. There's an indoor location at the Amangani Resort. Seats roughly about 60 people, I would say, comfortably in this indoor space. And they have a gorgeous grand staircase that you can come down into with huge glass windows behind you, and you can just have that entrance moment that you've always dreamed of.
I can just think of the bride who's thinking, I want a staircase, and now she can have that and a Wyoming wedding.
Right? And then another great wedding venue is Lost Creek Ranch. If you're set on the amazing views that Lost Creek offers, but don't have $100,000 plus budget, they do offer a rental of just their wedding pasture. So if you're a more budget bride but are still set on Lost Creek, you can inquire with them about just renting out their wedding pasture. And the rental is just the pasture, and you don't have access to all the amenities that Lost Creek offers, but you would get those views. And a benefit is a little bit more flexibility. So you get to bring in your own caterer, your own event rentals, and things like that, and aren't set on using the amenities and catering and alcohol and things like that Lost Creek offers. But where Lost Creek, I think, really shines is if you can do a full ranch buyout. With a full buyout, your guests have access to all the amenities and activities that Lost Creek offers. So you'll have access to their lodging, to their staff, horseback riding, Pilates, kids activities, float trips, cookouts, everything that you could want out of a Wyoming ranch. They offer buyouts in 2 different ways. So you can do a week buyout, or you can also do a 3-day buyout. 3-day buyouts are only available in the low season. In the summer, it's going to be that requirement of a 7-day, week-long buyout. And then the pricing varies a little bit based off of if you're having 40 guests or 60 guests. Those are sort of their 2 tiers. And then whether it's high season or low season. Lost Creek is unlike any other place. It's exactly your Jackson Hole ranch wedding experience that you've sort of dreamed of. Also, another perk of doing the full buyout, one thing a lot of brides might not know about is a lot of Jackson venues, pretty much all of them that I've worked with, have a 10 p.m. music curfew. So the town of Jackson has pretty strict cutoff times at 10 p.m. So if you're looking to party the night away, if you do a full buyout of Lost Creek Ranch, they do not have a 10 p.m. curfew.
That always is for the couples that want to party, you should figure out how to do that.
Exactly. For couples looking to have their guests stay on site but aren't looking for a full ranch buyout, Spring Creek Ranch is a great option. So they do have a lodging minimum. This year in 2022, it's a $7,000 lodging minimum. Yeah. But they have all sorts of lodging options, everything from large homes that you can rent out and put, your full family or your full wedding party in, down to individual guest rooms. And that lodging minimum doesn't have to be met by you as the couple. That is, you and all of your guests staying at the venue have to meet a lodging minimum. So that's something to think about. If you rent the large homes, you'll pretty easily meet that lodging minimum if you wanted to put like your family in your wedding party and do something nice for them or have them contribute. I think that wouldn't be too big of a hurdle and is a much more affordable price point than some of these larger ranch buyouts. Another thing that's great about Spring Creek is they have a variety of different spaces. So they have both indoor and outdoor spaces. You can talk with them, and if you're having a more intimate wedding, maybe consider the Sage Overlook. If you're having a larger wedding, you could consider the Sagebrush Vista. Or if you're hoping to be inside, maybe in the winter, you could consider their ballroom space inside.
With lodging, I know a guy, he was in charge of marketing and filling up rooms for a resort in San Juan Islands up in Seattle area. If you wanted to get the venue on a Saturday, you'd pay a certain rate. He got to the point where he would offer couples, if somebody was getting married on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they could essentially get the venue for free if they could provide X amount of guests to stay in the hotel. And for him, that was great because then he was hitting goals and exceeding goals for the resort of saying, hey, this is like, I got this many rooms booked out, over this season, X over last year. To save money, that's where you could go on off seasons because they know they have a low chance of booking that, or midweek, obviously, because they know they have a low chance of booking that. But in their minds, a Saturday in July, they know they're going to book those dates out. Any popular dates, the earlier you book, the better, because a lot of people are going to be gunning for those same dates.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say, especially with their indoor event space at Spring Creek Ranch, you could consider booking in one of those low seasons, and then everything in the town and will be less crowded and potentially more affordable. You might be able to get that dinner reservation you want and things like that.
I remember I shot a 4th of July wedding in Jackson, and not only were there barely any rooms available, but the rates were insanely through the roof for everything. So if you're bringing your guests into that too, just being cognizant, what is happening? Are there any events happening that are affecting availability, lodging, accessibility, things like that.
And I think just one other thing I wanted to mention that is a perk of Spring Creek Ranch is all of their different event spaces do have a number of pretty great inclusions. So if you are planning a destination wedding, I would highly recommend looking for venues that provide a decent amount of things already for you, because that's just fewer decisions that you have to make, fewer vendors that you have to pull together. So with Spring Creek Ranch, for example, their Sagebrush Vista is an outdoor space that can seat up to 300 guests. And that space comes with a tent with optional sidewalls, white wooden chairs, round tables for guests, a couple of cocktail tables, glassware, basic linens, flatware, plates, electricity, dance floor, and bathrooms. I've worked with a lot of brides who think that, they can book a venue where you have to bring everything in, and we can definitely do that. We can put together in a wedding in a field. But if you are planning a wedding on your own, and especially if it's a destination wedding, I would think about looking at venues that minimize the number of components you need to bring in from outside vendors.
I'll add to that. I'm shooting a wedding on Saturday in Victor, Idaho, so just across from Jackson. And I was talking with a couple this week, and one of their pain points this week is that the dance floor fell through. And so they're in a pinch trying to source a dance floor, which is not the easiest thing to source a week before your wedding. And so anything you can do to... I'm a huge fan of couples having stress-free weddings. I don't think anybody plans their wedding and thinks I really want to be stressed on my wedding day. And part of the way is simplifying decisions, like Laura was just talking about. Don't open yourself up to a big old can of worms. You're just limited out there.
For sure. And also Wyoming weather, making sure that you're booking vendors that are maybe more local to that area. You are minimizing some factors as well, instead of booking like a dance floor that has to come from Chicago or something like that. And then one thing I think a lot of couples overlook are the wedding venues that are just over Teton Pass into Idaho. So the views from the Idaho side, I don't think a lot of people who get out to Jackson actually ever get to see them. But the Tetons from, I guess, the backside of the mountains are gorgeous, just so overlooked. So I would say that if you are looking to look a little outside of the box or willing to look a little outside of the box with your Jackson Hole venue search, maybe pop over Teton Pass and you'll experience fewer crowds, still amazing views, and things are typically a little bit more affordable just because you're a little bit farther outside that Teton Center. And so one venue that really stands out to me is Moose Creek Ranch. And Moose Creek also offers full buyouts of their property, but they also offer a partial buyout of their property. A full buyout is the whole property, and a partial buyout would be renting out about half of their property and a few specific homes and locations that are sort of centrally located. So with a partial buyout, you would still have some other guests at the venue, but it is a more affordable option. And those buyouts are in for shorter periods of time as a minimum than some other venues on the Jackson side. So with Moose Creek, their minimum for their full buyout is 3 days. Their minimum for their partial buyout is 2 days.
Anything is subject to change as we're talking about all this, but hopefully it's helpful, and hopefully we're being as accurate as we can be, but it'll always change.
Yeah, for sure. Consider those venues that are just over in the Teton Valley on the other side of the pass. A few other great ones are Grand Targhee Mountain Resort. You might be able to, on a clear day, get that gorgeous view up at the top of the ski run of the Grand Teton from the backside, or Lane Canyon Ranch. So there are some great options if you're willing to just pop over the pass in your rental car. Jackson honestly has so many great wedding venues, and they're incredibly varied in their pricing, their inclusions, the guest count they can accommodate. And a few other venues to consider are, just a quick list off a few: Trail Creek Ranch, Jackson Hole Winery, Jackson Hole Golf and Tennis, Split Creek Ranch. Over towards Du Bois is Brooks Lake Lodge if you want a really intimate feel. So a good planner will know the different wedding venues and what they have to offer and be able to help you choose the venue that's right for you.
Thanks, Laura. Hopefully you guys found that helpful as you guys are planning your wedding in Wyoming or deciding if you want to do it there. Like Laura was saying, there are a ton of options and a ton of venues. And if you're looking for that Western feel and experience, Jackson Hole and the surrounding area definitely delivers on that. If you've never been there before, you'll be shocked when you see the Tetons and you drive up out of Jackson, or even if you fly into Jackson. So it's definitely something to see. If you are wanting planning services, you should reach out to Laura. You can find her at foreverwestweddings.com. With that being said, hopefully this was helpful. Leave any comments down below if you're watching this on YouTube, and have a great day.